mwenyewe anasema amekalia. Behaving like that in public.
Just to break it down in probably a language that doesn't have too many legal terminologies, you have said in a manner that is inconsistent with somebody,
who is sober. Absolutely.
In other words, you're saying
sober people behave. He was under the influence of a substance or substances. And it needs to come out very clear. You know, let me tell you one of the biggest debates that has been there during the past 4 years.
Yes.
Is the problem of alcoholism in central Kenya. It is an issue that has been discussed among our youth, and we need to be at the forefront as leaders, saying that some of these things we need to be careful and to stay away from them. We should not shy away from a problem.
No, it's important to tell our actually the problem was with our young people. I mean, your suggestion is that
these young people look up to certain offices. Sifuna Kajwang is an inspiration to very many people.
Yes.
Young people, not just in Homa Bay, but across the country. The way he behaves in public is key.
Should Maraga be worried? I mean, should the judiciary in general, is there independence now under threat? Just could we have the next clip and then we have a look at whether really now this is a threat to the independence of the judiciary, because the judiciary ought to be independent. Let me have that clip, please.
And I have always said, we have a problem with our judiciary, but regardless, we respect. But we shall revisit. We shall respect, but we shall revisit this agenda. Oh yes, we shall. As a Supreme Court, they cannot overturn the will of the people. Lakini Maraga thinks he can overturn the will of the people. We shall show you. And I have always said, we have a problem with our judiciary. We shall show you.
We shall show you.
That's a threat.
We shall revisit this agenda. And how do you revisit a court ruling? I don't know. What is that supposed to mean? If you're Maraga, if you're any of the Supreme Court judges, even the staff, what does that mean?
That is a direct threat to the judiciary. And the president's ranting on not just 1 or 2, but 3 going to 4 occasions shows the kind of president that he truly is. If given another term, he will come back with vendetta to seek out those people who did not support him,
yes,
those people who did not agree with him, in this case, the Supreme Court. But I want to tell him to go and read the Constitution. The Supreme Court is well shielded in the Constitution. I heard some of my colleagues in the Senate saying that if you go after IBC, you will go after
the Supreme Court,
giving the impression that IBC belongs to them and Supreme Court belongs to NASA. I feel flattered to be associated with the Supreme Court because it is a citadel of justice. And it will be, I would not even want to be associated with IBC that conducts irregularities and illegalities. But the Supreme Court cannot be kicked out by parliamentarians. It is the preserve of the Judicial Service Commission. And the president's job is just to establish a tribunal. And we know that the Supreme Court and the judiciary has asserted its independence. It will not be a walk in the park. Easy ni vitisho baridi. Like we say in my culture, someone is scaring you with a dead snake.
I mean, first it was Justice Odunga.
Yeah.
Now it is a direct affront to Maraga. I mean,
you see, one of the things that I have understood about Jubilee, from the president to his foot soldiers, like Honorable Duale, is that they are very petty. You know what they did last time when they did not get their way with the judiciary? They actually slashed 1 billion shillings off their budget.
Of their budget,
yeah. So you see, even these tantrums that they are throwing, they are meant to be threats. But we know that judges enjoy security of tenure. Their removal, as Honorable Kajwang has alluded to, can only be conducted or supervised or undertaken under the auspices of the Judicial Service Commission, which has come out to defend judges in the past. I remember when Uhuru went to Kisii, or was it Nyamira, and he tried to insinuate that he had given one of their sons.
I mean, it was a reward. It was supposed to be a reward.
And the JSC came out very strongly to clarify that Justice Maraga has gotten there by merit, by the fact that he has been a judicial officer of distinction for a long time, and he got the position, not due to political patronage.
It was not a token.
So what he's saying is like, some of the people, some of these threats, when they are made, you wait for them to sober up, and I'm sure they will revisit those threats.
Rose Kemunto, one president of 42 million Kenyan, but thinks 5 or 6 people can't make a decision for 42 million
And by
Kenyans.
the way, let me address this issue of overturning the will of the people.
Yes.
The Supreme Court has said that the numbers that IEBC put out are not reflective of the will of the people.
Yes.
So it's not the will of the people that has been overturned.
Yes.
It is the will of the server
Yes.
that has been overturned.
Yeah.
The will of the...
The server. There are server here in the clouds or wherever it is, they say it is in the US.
Guys, Rick Fossman, guys, the battle is not ours. I can assure you that it's God's and it's working for us. Personal security of the Chief Justice, for example. I mean, the person making those remarks is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. What implications do those have on Maraga's personal security, given the recent history, I mean, the disappearance of Msando and what happened next? Should he be afraid?
When Msando was killed, we said we are 10 million strong. They
Yes.
can't kill all of us.
Absolutely.
Even if they were to kill each of us per second, it will take them a long time to kill all of us. The Chief Justice, David Maraga, and in his opening remarks when he was delivering his ruling, he said that a nation must observe fidelity to the Constitution,
Yes.
respect to the rule of law, and the fear of God. There used to be a drunk man in my village who every other time he came from his changa drinking adventures, he would walk around saying, I fear none but God.
Yes.
That's Chief Justice Maraga. He
Yes.
fears no man. For him, the fear, the fidelity to the Constitution,
And the fear of
respect
God.
for the rule of law, and the fear of God, not the fear of Uhuru Kenyatta.
Absolutely.
And those are the kind of men we need. Those are the men of courage we need to drive this nation forward.
In the light of all this, before we go to the next bit of our discussion, what do you have to say to our observers? I mean, this ruling is one world apart from a rosy picture created by one John Kerry and the other observers that, I mean, some were even saying that the NASA leader should concede defeat even before 10% of the results was streaming in.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that is left them with egg on the face. One of the things that I want to make clear, it's not as if we had a problem with all observers.
Yes.
It's specific observers who are here to protect certain interests. And those interests are well known. I mean, you know, every human being, if you consider yourself a human being, you need to have capacity for shame. That's what distinguishes you from an animal. I mean,
Capacity
for
for...
shame. I mean, you should feel shameful about the things that you do as a human being. Otherwise, you're not a human being. So, Kerry, wherever he is, I'm sure he's been shamed enough by the fact that his scheme has been exposed. I am sure he is not welcome in this country anymore, probably only as a tourist, if the people in the coast and the other regions will allow him, but not as an observer for elections in this country. Because we have already demonstrated that he's not a credible observer. The Carter Center has been left with the egg in the face. If they're here to push narratives and interests, then, they should give up their position as neutral observers
Yes.
and join Jubilee in the campaigns. I mean,
Yeah, and
we will beat all of them.
There's also a sense of courage. There is a sense of courage. When the first African state, 1957, Ghana got independence,
Yeah.
Nkrumah said, there is a new African on the map. And right now there's a new African in the world, and that new African is Kenya. That new African is able to do things that even the US cannot do. In the Al Gore versus George Bush case,
Absolutely.
technology came in and there were vested interests. We know that Jeb Bush, who was the governor of Florida, rigged the vote to favor his brother, but the Supreme Court failed to get the courage
This-
to overturn that election. In the last election, hacking by the Russians
Yes.
is an issue that is there. Even Trump himself has set up teams to investigate
Investigate,
hacking.
yeah.
The Americans do not have the guts to investigate themselves, yet they come here and pontificate and lecture us. Kenya is a new African on the globe that is not ashamed to respect its constitution, the rule of law, and fear God.
So this ruling has really, as a Pan-Africanist, or looking at it from a Pan-Africanist view, it's one of those things that tells you that if we seriously decide to focus on self-determination, Africa can really show the way.
Absolutely. I mean, we have excelled in many fields, in sports, even in technology. We have the resources. The entire country, the world depends on the resources of Africa, the manpower, the markets. But we are held back by a few issues here and there. And this includes the refusal by others to actually democratize and to ensure that the people of Africa remains subverted. So it's a big victory for the people of Kenya and for the people of Africa.
And Raila Odinga, I think, captured it yesterday. He said he stands tall, stands proud as an Afro-optimist,
Yes.
not as an Afro-pessimist. Many
Yes.
of the observers were pessimists. They thought that in Africa, an election, even if the
They are
standards
used to
are
failure.
low,
Yeah.
even if the standards
It's
are low,
okay
just
for as long
accepted
as
it
there
over,
is
we
there
have
is peace.
said that standards must be maintained. The constitution must be followed. The rule of law must be followed. And if all of us, and including Uhuru Kenyatta, could sober up and join us in this journey of Afro-optimism, we can be a great country.
Zain Kamya, you're saying, let the president stop blaming our Supreme Court judges. They are the same ones who declared him a single person who paved way for the 15 million people. Delila Bahati, hey, Delila, what a name, okay. I wonder, with Uhuru, if he won, why he's so bitter. By this time, he should have started celebrating if he's going to win again. Now, let's go into another touchy issue. IEBC. They have been, I mean, the order is there. They have actually announced that the next election will happen on the 26th of October. There have been calls of IEBC to be reconstituted. There have been calls of Chiloba to go. So, I mean, it's certain we are going back for a presidential election. Who's going to conduct it? And if it's IEBC, in what form? Mheshimiwa.
The Supreme Court ordered the first respondent to organize elections within 60 days.
Yes.
The Supreme Court said that the first respondent conducted irregularities and illegalities and failed to conduct an election in strict compliance with the law and with the Constitution.
Yeah.
We are waiting for the detailed and reasoned ruling of the Supreme Court so that those officials and individuals within the IBC who conducted the irregularities and illegalities, they cannot be part of this electoral exercise. Remember, IBC is that huge monolith that includes clerks at the polling station.
Right.
We are not saying that we throw away all the clerks and all the POs and all the ROs and all the commissioners. But the guys who committed irregularities and illegalities, once that report is out, for those with illegalities...
But there has been specific calls for one Chiloba that he must go. I mean, NASA leaders have put it in black and white
CEO,
that they
with
cannot go to the next election
Yes.
with Chiloba at the helm.
Absolutely.
You and I were in the same room with the Chiloba when doing IT verification. Like he'll tell you what the experience was.
First of all, Baggy, let's even, there is something called treason. If you attempt to establish a government other than by constitutional means,
Which is
that you are sitting somewhere, feeding information into a server, you are electing a president yourself, whereas millions of Kenyans have lined up to vote and you're subverting and subjugating their will. It is actually treasonable. You are establishing a government outside the constitution. So the people who are responsible, we cannot allow them to have another opportunity. Let me give you an even easier reason why these people belong, first of all, in jail.
Yes.
Disobedience of a court order is a crime punishable by jail time or a fine. Now, we were making the case in the court that this particular election did not meet the threshold of the Constitution. One of the thresholds is transparency. And we have insisted on IBC opening up their systems and their equipment and the ICT and the technology so that we can actually verify, because an election is supposed to be verifiable under the standards that have been set by the Constitution. But even in the face of a court order of the highest court in the land, they actually refuse. We were in that room. We were in charge of the operation at IBC of scrutiny of the technology. Even in the face of a court order, at 4:45, when the report is supposed to be submitted at 5, the ICT director, Mr. Mohati, tells us that they themselves are unable to log into their database. They themselves. You will remember, we had sat there from the previous day waiting for them to create credentials for our IT experts to be able to access the database. So those credentials were created, but those credentials could not get us into the database. So at some point, the expert who's seconded from the judiciary says, okay, the login credentials you've created for the NASA experts are not working. Can we use you as Mr. Mohati? You log into the database, you allow the NASA team to look at it and make copies for the logs, and then he says even he himself cannot log into the database because they are experiencing communication problems with their server.